Hello, America. Countries, group, and world. Our human species body, rather, of bodies. Individually grouped and together now, tactical ulterior from how we were grouped and are grouped by that which is hyper additional difference. For example, from the ways that we use difference. This is how we solve and find answers with logic. Logic experts instead have had roles. Even online, it's recorded with the news. News, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Their influence to pretend it's personal when people say bad things about them. When they know consciously at the same time, they've been relying on people that they're pretending with passions and emotions they have faith in, but they know they're sticking fake things in databases and or self-valuing that and or using them, leaving out details, pretending passions and emotions anyway. And while with delusions, then it makes it look like we're calling people names and they're hiding what came first. They're starting fights with people. The news is attaching people to fake words and locations with themselves and with others and everyone around them. Since I was a kid, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, the Clinton administration, since before the Clinton administration, before our founders were born, for example, where unions are used as positives or negatives, because we know there's corruption. The reason there's corruption with that, the FBI had roles with it. They have roles of planting, typing fake audio and video transcripts into databases. Since before our founders were born, they have roles with remote uses of the names in all sides of criminal and of civil cases, and their lawyers, and victims advocates, and people in the hallways of the courts. People associated next to the neighbors and people that live near corners, near people that are tied to the prosecutors and judges, etc. Same ones involve time roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones in the witness protection program involved, and other unrelated body dumping spots, and a convicted serial killer, and a convicted child abuser principal. First roles with them also with the array and the fake differences between MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Also with sources as WFSB, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with various natures of federal organized crime and predicate acts, wire crime methods, with names on off their location. And in other words, with names off their retired and standing into branch too, as names, recorded uses of themselves increasingly with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people on off the state judicial branch offices and on off the state corrections offices know how they have music playing every time they bring up serious things with murders and the way they have grouped and charged criminal enterprises and people. And they left out simultaneously also as the hyper evidential how nature uses black pupils, whites of eyes, additional ways, not just for the most known, fake while pretending other, not just from the breaching method using that, and also using all its uses ulterior additional from its own to screen itself and its method. The same way I looked on Google one time how a computer works as a method. How everything works. Don't stay all stupid jerks. How everything works is its identity of relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that equally. As we can discern using science proper from inside its volume, the identity of space/existence. So they have space to find formally where there are agreements. That space is everything outside the physical identities. See, nature shows us the needs to understand how, in other words, the identity of relativity and actual identity has that, and how completely different species have male, female, species, body of volume. Also has other difference demonstrations. For example, how nature communicates where this is about different. Answer our questions by giving us the meaning simultaneously. Why and how we have black pupils and whites of eyes, and why and how giraffes have black pupils, whites of eyes, with no different color eyes between that. This is about exceptions in exception nature, and is about a special difference. How we are distinct from the other species bodies, but also not distinct. And also how even totally unconnected species have the identity of value progression that is shared, has those manifest similarities. We also have had shared, individually grouped and together, our nation's sickly self-value uses of theories, like the theory of relativity, theory of special relativity, used offensively to pretend people even need to read theories to defend what we know is true always, not denying the slave's exceptions, not valuing them and denying, let alone the significance of that, let alone the special difference to a special. Each special difference is distinct from special difference. So, the theory of relativity by Anthony Wall is now proven as the theorem of relativity. The other species have the same shared identity, an extent of discernible shared identity that our species body volume has as a science, as 3 volume sciences, to show not just a shared one, way more. These are 5 distinct identities of sequence/simultaneous nature. As each part of each self, as each part of each grouping, and all together. All the sciences share an identity where they appear not to. See, everyone's been leaving out all that is actually discernible for science. All that has been using remotely. Psychopaths regarding where and how they think that they should use aggression and blame, and or where they think they should stay silent, and or where they think they should stay calm. So roles with elections, locations used criminally foreign influence are easily discernible. This has roles with conjunctions to what's been leading the help, what they call the help. When they talk about it on Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, they get different sources through administrations. And their differences, and the exception, their uses of their defenses of their identity are being included without it's manifest in their syntax nature where they have subject treatments. Affected as roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, preventing people a voice by fabricating audio and video transcripts, changing what they say. They've been hiding behind how they have all the nations in the news, including the ones fighting with each other like Russia, China, and America. That's because they have to counter the real causes since semi-ancient times of criminally foreign influenced uses of names, including of locations, names and locations, voicings. Now, as individuals, as groups and or groupings, including all natural difference /s, employed as meanings, theories, and tactical delusions, and experts of logic. We need them so that truth is exploited by the breaching method, and they have it right where mental health is. They have where we have real health care, hospitals. They have them still involved with worse than Joseph Mengele stuff, with World War II, with M1, but seeming less. See, everyone left out the criminal foreign influences because the other countries, we know they're criminal and citizenship natures together. We know there are uses of their names A through Z. Tactical ulterior from how their own founders and our own founders asked us to communicate it actually for us to communicate for themselves. We know this breaching method knew that things like criminal insidiousness and like criminal foreign influences and like criminal enterprises, groupings with criminal insidiousness, criminal foreign influences, no. With the private juxtaposed and the interbranch left out. Why do you think witch trials, no matter who made them up, and what extent they were made up and what for? Not even teaching about it wrong can be defended without having the values hyper simultaneous, having been obfuscated and going to be obfuscated. So roles with the World Trade Center attack were effectively used for maintenance to the roles with torture that involves medical locations and remote uses, both of the criminally foreign influence fact-sheet nature and databases, for example, uses, but also the tactical delusions associated with the doctors and the courts, family members, and their roles with military, foreign, and domestic, and their family members, and with wire crime acts and methods on off the locations of /s of everyone, because they're used remotely though. This is a breaching method that figured out how it could keep everyone doing things that no one wanted to do. And increasingly, with that being manifest in where and how we are syntax treatments and positive and negative treatment. Where there's a positive and negative treatment is identity treatment. It is not by accident. In fact, it is hyper-evidential that and how. One of the things that was sickly distinctly against our founders, who had to counter-extort the other founders, and against the colonists, the Native Americans, and everyone sickly distinctly. We know, based on your pigment, you're hurt specifically distinctly. This knew that the course of black measures people as psychopaths, as the only people who could defend order to where and to how we could get forced, revealed. Through all the excuses that countries have self-valued roles with it grouped, how they're extorted, criminal insidiousness, because that's how they justify being individuals. Fake, pretending they could speak about peace and not realize that there's either hyper peace or it's a criminal insidiousness nature of peace. Oh, but that's all it is. So why are you the only person? That's why you're the only person in the thing. That's not one of the only reasons. From each age of fact-sheeping nature, little kids had, and adults definitely have, the means to discern, to understand, other than what was pretended, understood about American history with passions and emotions. Per the relativity, too, of how every time economic treatments are made, Every time ism treatments are made and defended, you guys left and leave out how the breaching method forced self-valued roles with natures of industries. Therefore, identity ground uses and voices, sense and sensibilities used in Austin's phrase, natures. Identity has a relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, has a relativity to positive and negative values and value nature and value progression at the same time, because the identity of the hyper-simultaneous, as the identity theorem reveals, the other species have sexes, and there is a shared identity that all the living bodies have, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper-simultaneously, as the extent we have discernible of the relativity, the identity of relativities, identity of relativity to itself, except for how there are two further identities of conjunction to this, and or three, where how also we are valued distinctly as a quality of diffusion, but to appreciate that and to discern this, for example, we cannot leave out the smallest finite detail that came before the order of the finite, regardless if people agree or not, too. The value of truth and relative to itself, that identity that no one can make up, no one can beat it, even though everyone is it. There's not one thing in space/existence that is not the identity of space/existence. We are like a little part, just like each little part of each body has a semi-nature relationship to its complete body and to its grouped parts. Coordination is this way, but contemplation is other too. And prayer means other than its pretended with passions and emotions, but uses of all locations /S criminally foreign influence. Prayer application /S by that at other locations to maintain effective uses self-value of the syntax nature, the A, therefore B, the Boolean logic natures. Boolean logic is named after one of the men associated with criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. Descriptions of all names historically and of their values, and of the values relative to them, such as algebra, such as logic. So there is a Leahy family, Brendan Leahy and his father. One of them put a clipboard before me. I had no conversation with him. The other one, like the next day, contorted his body behind me and was like that. And he asked me if I wanted a nicotine patch. I said, yeah. And in other words, I was going to write about that. They put me in whole fake conversations with themselves. And I found that these are men and women since I was a kid, attaching little kids and their families to fake conversation ties to their own family members themselves, with judges and prosecutors, with police families at police departments, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with his co-defendants, with their neighbors, involved with wire crime acts and methods, with overt criminal enterprises and with private ones, and with unions that use corners of buildings, make fake exceptions of people knowing each other, and then attach everyone to fake audio and video transcripts, hide what's actually recorded, rolls with the identity theft, fraud, slander method against our founders, sickly distinctly from how against Native Americans, and how they joined them, sickly distinctly against that too. Sickly distinctly against the founders they had to counter extort. The proverbial devil has them pretend and even believe that they should glorify and or hate them for reasons they shouldn't. The only thing that should be hated is the pseudoscience method and rolls with it shouldn't be itself, not the people that it rolls with it. From the formal position as speaking for the law's nature, the law's identity. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not police form, I'm not a criminal, I told you. Hyper evidential. Has all sides in criminal and civil cases, and lawyers and victims advocates still used from all the locations, all those locations named, with more names involved. And not just the country's group. There's more to that. See suits and ties, encounters, sick, fake, branches, full. There's the founders communicated other than they communicated. So they're using in all sides of cases, and the lawyers pretending not to realize federal evidence acts and methods, self-value, because of how they've been used remotely since they were kids, with other replacing the short words of the communications. Proper about American history, any country's history. Slavery was about predicate acts with facts method, that everyone was forced to be roles with individually grouped and together, and then to hurt each other in sustained ways that way, while blaming other things, others, ourselves for the worst cause and use of that, singular, while more and more. That's part of the excuses of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature is only allowed to be manifest. Defenses of syntax force. They don't care about who's lying or not, legitimately. They have to be carrying towards the criminal foreign influences, towards what I call them wire crime acts and methods, pretending they care about their appearance of justice, preemptively act grouped ways, and increasingly while being used remotely, needing to hide what came first, what's going on right then, that's actually capable of being discerned, and what will be discerned. So there even the whole bunch of methods, but there is a singular method that is clearer and clearer that we could define. But mandated law has to be followed. The agencies have roles encouraging and colluding with Wethersfield Police Facebook page, New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page, and they make a whole bunch more. They have sexually passionate crimes and with child offenders proven since before they were proven. Further, they've been planting evidences on all sides of my house. They reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People with the name Jerry Kerr are involved with it. There are also a whole bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University involved, and Trinity College reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also involved with shipping families, and names associated with Justin Klavinskis and Justin Stryker, a Joshua Stryker, and a Justin and a Joshua Julian, further with a Principal Beans with more than worse than he was put in jail for, reportedly upskirt pictures on and off one of the shopping centers, involved also with Rocky Hill shopping centers and Wethersfield, all along the South Street Highway, and the policing of the locations. They have also roles with the families, with the policings of the schools, involved with a whole bunch of other countries in the form of the director of the FBI and military, criminally foreign influence, remote uses of it. They have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A whole bunch of people tied to it, and as people in the Chandler family, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander against strangers, make fake exceptions. This Joshua Julian, I never had anything to do with him. And he's involved with predicate acts on my street and on Facebook. In some ways, Facebook's involved with their own leaderships and ties to their leaderships. A whole bunch of ties to my middle school, people I had classes with with a whole bunch of people I didn't have class with, and people I had class with had nothing to do with it. In other words, they influenced people to roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with victims and victims advocates with identity theft, frauds, slanders, federal evidences, crime, acts, and methods, whole methods, roles, and acts, where everyone's forced to speak through others. This is also relative to how they get away with communicating other with a breaching method, for example. Human fact, human nature breaching method is one of the answers as one of the things that what caused shootings in New York City this year. It is inseparable from that as a proper answer. So is how they get away with pretending other and with passions and emotions. Everyone talks about their job. That's why we need to address why and how we were forced into the economic positions that were entrenched functional. And so before I could put on writing and get legally published, in my corporation or enterprise, this is hyperintelligence. This uses lists and arrays being led by what is hyper additional to anything anyone could list and array. Look at it as a conjunction to it, as only increasing value, but increasing values, plural, conjunctive to. But this is how to cause evolutions, fruits, and gifts and means out of nowhere. You guys know I put the cartoon interface first, rather than the old school, do this, this is how it goes, but how are we going to make money if we don't, how are we going to employ? It's all right if people want to put that logic, then they're in the place of people from fixing the fake stuff in databases since before computers. Roles with that never went away because uses of it never went away. And because it had nothing to do with everything it caused. Originally, and is still causing, because it's with location as per the singular use of location /s. That is also used by the singular thing that is relative to why and how nature is demonstrating to us the increasing value of understanding individually grouped and together, how Native Americans were made to either fight with themselves, and that was used by the breaching method, and or to be unities with themselves, and that was used by the breaching method. This is using employments of the human body's names as systems, tactical ulterior from the one that is positive unto itself, that is not as criminal insidious in its nature as a positive. So roles with slavery is roles with an identity theft, fraud, and slander method that is being blamed on our founders because it was entrenched north and south before our founders were even born, and they did not have free speech. They had to pretend, and they had to use real truths for lies regarding their motivations for roles with the rebellion against the T-tax, with American history, for example. Slavery was entrenched sickly distinctly north and south, but also sickly non-distinctly. It was remote uses of remote criminally foreign influence uses of the nations that used ourselves remotely through themselves, just as it had our own through our own. It employed the names of the human species, volume science /s, tactical ulterior from its own. And so it had our only formal litigation natures counter things like criminal insidiousness natures, needing to, still as it, needing to blame why and how on other things, others ourselves, and while needing to value that having been. So the causes of witch trials and the use of it /s right at Wethersfield, Connecticut, and the uses of the names next to it still are still involved with predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, including with foreign and domestic medical, at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and unions, families, tricks with facts, although part on campuses, part off, and with the news. But now they have to hide what's actually been recorded. No, but they call people liars if you say you don't know them. Oh, here's a picture. They're walking next to you. They have roles with various niches of federal criminals and criminal enterprises before they got caught, as roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases, and victims advocates in their campuses, and their motivations, pretending passions and emotions as psychopaths, pretending and or when they're calm. They switch names and forge names and sequences, as multi-front roles with the news, with the identity theft, fraud, slanders. They change what people say. They pretend people have mental. They force people to mental evaluation locations with ones that have been roles planting fake evidences on our street with families tied to a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital. Have like with names Mark Violet, Mike Violet, have roles with this, with all sides of criminal and civil cases, with people increasingly tied to body dumping spots, even if they're made up, on off Trinity College and other campuses, roles behind people's backs when you're in campuses with them. Make fake exceptions, they may take a couple of pictures, and with people I don't know at all, like this Joshua Julian, involved increasingly with predicate acts on all sides of my house and with their names uses. So Wethersfield police have a whole bunch of people with whiting forensics when I was a kid, and then now they're increasingly involved with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and since, and with foreign and domestic military, for example. Yeah. Fake sides. Get them on paper. Fake one name and sequence. So if you ask a judge to help with short words, they're going to go look in the database to see fake things. They're switching names. They're preventing that from being reported. Now they have to pretend they don't understand us. Don't let that happen. Don't let them get more innocent victim predators be more hyper predators. Because that's what they are too. They have roles with Sandy Hook campuses, including a prison campus and fire campuses, involved with wire crime acts and methods, and mail crime, and with the news media, attaching little kids to fake ties and conversations with foreign and domestic families and medical ones. You have some sick people with mental health care and with uses of all the words in the dictionary. And they've been getting away with it because the judges speaking fake things into records too. Increasingly, with their family members involved, criminally foreign influence uses of on-off town line drive locations all along the South Steam Highway, all along Route 175. People involved with predicate acts that were involved with the narratives and the sources as the ones involved with the agencies and private police forms, with criminally foreign influence uses of corners near me, and then forcing people to use people's names or not use them because they have roles with the courts and the police forms and the criminal enterprises and other at the same time with the civil and criminal cases, and the victims and victims advocate fake difference as collusions. That's what's involved with Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook and Sandy Hook promises involved with people with digital crimes further, with increasingly that women enter branch roles, defenses of identity of the branches. So we never had an identity that wasn't criminally foreign influence. The January 6th increasingly being valued as means to get away with pretending that they believe that appearances of justice should be about what they are not. Our founders told us to blame on the breaching method. That's what they communicated. And they told us, they communicated for us to understand why and how they had to counter-extort the other founders. And why and how the Native Americans are our founders too. Why do you think it's president/chief? That's what that communicates. Plus, what communicates is if you deny it and defend that logic in denial of it, thinking that other might be more probable or practical to convict, your logic is inherent. It's going to exhibit inherent active, grouped, and simultaneous demonstrations of this. For example, too, regardless if people know what president or is what, and if someone does, every form of knowledge is used to get over on correlation nature. Don't forget, we have black pupils, whites of eyes. We can count the hairs on the head, to use the old saying. We can count the hairs on the head of anyone who would forget that. So, World Trade Center attack. The World Trade Center has roles with investigators that have entertained what can't be entertained, with logic experts and use of those locations, types of countering bodies to types of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like associated with fentanyl, like associated with the border, where and how those theaters have been maintained by a breaching method that also maintains itself by maintaining everyone else and all these other motivations and appearances of, real thing, negative value, blame, and the cause of them blamed on other things other than ourselves. Fentanyl is increasingly where the fake difference of the criminal enterprises and of their patients and their family members. See, the fire departments have roles with Hartford Hospital, with Russians, and with New Britain campuses, and with families on off Central Connecticut State University that train state police. They have roles through time with child offenders, leaders of kids, uses of their own kids, at the same time overt criminal enterprises and private ones in the way of education proper, in the way of truth and honesty proper, little tricks to get away with it, little magic tricks. And they have everyone certain type of victim/predator, victim-predator / hyper-victim, hyper-predator with perception itself. So you guys cannot follow mandated law, and that is maintained. Not one has trained. Former Director of FBI Robert Luskin and more people involved with the World Trade Center attack location, for example, named Scalora, are one of the ones involved with Wethersfield police confessions and confirmed by people with the name Cololo. Also, Bob Chase recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he has roles with Phil Cololo with falsified police reports and with a child offender principal and more others on the child abuse registry that he had and has roles with, and as his roles with various natures of organized crime bodies and people not legitimately training police forms and not legitimately all with the borders all along where Wethersfield touches Hartford has something to do with the people involved with wire crimes of Wethersfield police and their confessions regarding the uses, most recent confessions regarding uses of the name Cololo further and Sullivan with this. Also, they have roles with various natures of drugs and medicines crimes as the police forms and roles with the police forms. And people at Hartford Hospital and the military are supposed to be against that. The Eastern State Narcotics Drugs Task Force has roles with foreign and domestic medical families, including with the Department of Children and Families. Supposed to be against certain things that are in the furtherance of that. Sick uses of kids and their family members of all instances, because investigators, and all perception originally instills used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. That's what they're having black pupils / whites of eyes and exception nature. And exception nature is capable of discerning with where they opine are formal steward. I saw on YouTube a video with an electronic voice, a fake voice, making allegations about Ice Cube and Hollywood. See, Hollywood is just one of all theater locations, database type locations since before computers manifest fake. So that's one of the things that this network will be. Is already capable of showing. They have criminally foreign influence uses of not just your information. They're not just spying on you. They're measuring and maintaining roles with predicate acts against you and everyone around you through you guys. This is what maintains finite details. The value of the simultaneous, how in other words, other, pretended not realize. Delusions, too. Mixed, criminally foreign influence, fact, truth, nature, quality, aspects, nature, what they call, underlying what they call debate. And why? Fake branches bow, fall, build wall. But the one, the /S, species body, here, I tell you best. Cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, /S. This is the body of value coming through of that identity. The identity that has the other species body with these manifest. Demonstrations that we are not that way, but we are not one-way group. And one way anyway. Because it's the same thing completing us. Keeping this phenomenon. Is its identity relationship to itself and the value of it to itself, or it forces those systems from here, these of ID. For space nature transfer, nature being this definition of nature. It's only increasing value as volume with the identity of the relationship to itself as value. Because that's completed by the value transfer. Of it gave each identity, each of 5 parts of its complete identity, the identity of simultaneous, hyper-simultaneous. Again, we can discern these are 3 distinct identities of simultaneous nature: being an individual, being grouped, and species body of volume. One of the things that makes that about difference is what is its difference, one of the things is how they are being an individual, being a simultaneous nature. While we're simultaneously the reason why the species body is a volume science distinct, but non-distinct and simultaneous. And etc. Relativity is real. So subject treatments that leave out relativity, they can't afford to discern exception nature. One of the things that was used, the people involved with the uses of elections locations are people involved with the intelligence community, both sides in the exception nature. So, when they hid what they were actually and are actually used for as value, is tactical ulterior from what logic, logic uses value / value progression two additional ways as nature than anyone could make up as itself. We couldn't invent how the other species not just have those qualities, there are those qualities, that identity. They are not our identity, but they are with those Black people's white divide. There's this shared identity of life where its identity of relationship to all parts of itself, the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. Where Earth has, and we have, and all the other species additionally, individually grouped it together. We have a concentrated, a special difference. It has relativity. not special difference, e-special. If we want to leave it only special and call that special, it will continue to demonstrate negative value to progressions, acts, and natures. Overall, bound, grouped, and to every individual, but increasingly individuals since semi-ancient times have been forbid. And worse, the means to defend properly the order of the finite, which only an individual can defend. And so they have leaders forced to self-value roles with this. Also, self-value being the phrase used because this is an exploitation of how identity of value/value progression works. Don't stay all stupid jerks. So slavery was about a predicate acts with facts method, delivery system method. It was about a criminal insidiousness delivery system method, propagation method, and self-cultivation roles method, per uses of that method relative to, and as why we have to understand first, and then while founding and still Native Americans too, distinctly from, and while semi as our founders, they have this breaching method, dividing them individually, grouped together, dividing their difference rather, because their difference is syntactical value more to any individual, even if they're not Native American, where how that can be used to show how the hyper-identity, the hyper-native science is being got over on with logic. You know, the suburbs are tactically denatured before our founders were born. They were designed for torture/slavery. Only the extent of it is debatable. The significance of it, where people are shown they're already used remotely. In other words, this is a method that put predicate acts against the kids of New York City, distinctly from the kids of Hartford, Connecticut, and of suburbs. Again, designed before, tactically denatured to cause negative value progressions, acts, and natures before our founders were even born. The breaching method had already been sustained upon them, already perfected. Use of the phases coming out of it. Roles with laws, complete tactical possessions of everyone and uses of that. And it needs to respond, counter those things, used effectively to measure and maintain those responses in recorded details and names uses effectively better than leaving its name out. The breaching methods. So we have to refer to this as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. Or we have to suffer the suits and ties counters. It came through 6 schools. How are they going to be manifest now with the right words and responses? Follow mandated laws, course. Connecticut interbranch switches names and they pretend not to understand people. Switches sequence. The same names involved with them in their locations are involved with federal agencies. All exceptions tied to them, including Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook promised, please follow mandated law for them. You guys understand how you guys are victims, but make sure that that you get the Connecticut interbranch onto paper. I don't blame you at all. You know what I'm saying? I need a response on paper. So you have a lot. These are all people. There's a whole bunch of people involved with the Joe Aiello too, planting fake passions and emotions and uses of exceptions as his roles with various natures of federal crimes, federal evidences crimes, and child offenders, and people with the intelligence community involved with him in locations next to Hartford Hospital through time. People associated with Chris Cullen and a former Mayor Gold, per him. And he's being influenced by roles with judges and prosecutors and overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. He's involved with on-off campuses and with Um, on and off. The only time I ever saw him on Wethersfield campus, he was involved with, he used his sister to make fake motivations. Down the road, too, they have something to do with the fire department next to Trinity College, and they have roles with names of predicate acts on Trinity College and roles with murders at the time and confessions tied to that, and people that were involved with District Court of Connecticut people, New Britain Superior Court, and Hartford courts that were influencing their family members and intimate ties to make confessions to strangers too. Now, all exception nature, they use criminally foreign influence. They have used roles with tricks with their roles. We use readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence, effectively uses of drugs. And I never did any drugs in West Hartford. One time they took a picture of me apparently with next to a Joe DeMoro at Ray Claw. Been fabricating. These are people involved with the World Trade Center, with the intelligence community, intercities, Connecticut, and interbranch Wethersfield locations, on off the state prison offices, on the state correction offices, also where and how they have effectively employed corrections roles to the maintenance of criminally foreign influence uses of being and having been employed, natural differences like black and white, and responses to what employed that, effectively used to keep it, blamed all the things other than themselves. You know, they're offensively pretending to perceive prejudice with the KKK theme. Identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shifts, fake evidences, fake motivation. They have remote uses of all sides of cases already. They already had remote use. A whole bunch of people tied to a police chief, Cintron, with New Britain and West Hartford locations, and something to do with those woods. Reports of you know, I don't know his extended family members, Montezecado. They tried to make a fake exception one time at one of the campuses further involved with whiting forensics, with a whole bunch of people with wire crimes with them, and John Mayano, and foreign and domestic, all along Route 175. Through time with federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and their roles with the names, timed uses of it on and off campuses, and timed uses of the FBI and and unions with Joshua Stryker and a Joshua Julian. Also with child offender principals, they hid the confessions the principal child offender and made to me. And they fabricated audio and video transcripts and changed the medium he communicated with me over. He fake emails. And they've been replacing what's recorded online because they interbranch. Like there are people with the name O'Neill with the intelligence community in West Hartford campuses and parks and religious locations. Being, you know, they have roles with, they're hiding behind how they have, you know, Koreans involved, people from Pakistan, from Italy, involved with mental health locations and databases, also with the names at campuses, predicate acts with facts, just writing whole fake audio and video transcripts, fake ties, fake natures of ties between students, and then effectively preventing voices in the future, pretending kids to fake ties to doctors, including with the news at the same time. So they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes to get away with this. They are effectively used remotely. Congress itself, that's what's recorded. Follow mandated law for them. Make sure that Connecticut interbranch gets on paper, and tell Judge Napolitano that they're lying to him in the databases and or with him. Please make sure you hurry up too, because they attach me, everyone around me, to fake conversations with me and change conversations with me with themselves, and they're hiding what came first, increasingly since I was a kid. And it was timed uses of it in the World Trade Center attack, with the same ones intercities from Connecticut had roles with it, and that they forced my sons recorded. There's people with the name from that name O'Neill with their kids, with the intelligence community, formerly with campuses in West Hartford, but also with their kids at Wethersfield campuses, I don't even know them. They were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people from Whiting's forensics, involved with predicate acts in my street with them. A whole bunch of state police families and intercities with the name Cololo involved. Also with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids, physical delusions, criminally foreign influence too, on as their roles with posts on my thing, as their roles with courts, with rape threats on their Facebook pages. These are little cliques that grew up with a Judge Smith, and there's a Judge Killian also who's been speaking fake things into records with child sex offenders, as one of the ones involved with doctors, foreign and domestic, real sick with their patients and kids and families, and fake conversations with people. I'd get them out the paper fast with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and et cetera. There was a guy who looks just like James Comey. He should fear God if that was him in the Britain Superior Court, because this is every year since before the World Trade Center attack too. And I tried to do it formally, semi-formally. Since before the World Trade Center attack, you guys been doing predicate acts since. They have something to do with their roles with the corners of Elm Streets in Wethersfield and in Rocky Hill, as people who've been planting predicate acts with facts into databases, and with the names at campuses, and with the names that were doing it when they weren't even on the campuses. Roles with sequence shifts. Also in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center attack, right before it, the night before it, and leading up to that, shortly and long term leading up to that, as people that have been timed roles with overt criminal enterprise, private one, union, families, on campuses, off campuses, behind people's backs, and they try to make fake exceptions because they need to hide how they use the simultaneous. There's a quality of evidences that all formal evidence treatment natures can't afford to discern. Not one has learned. So hear the phrase injunctive reliefs. Hear the phrase hear the word unabridged. Hear the phrase unabridged constitution. Hear nature's voice when hearing breeze and sounds rest. The bed vaccines. Thank you. Follow mandate law, fix the news, predicate acts, and make sure you get on paper with the Wethersfield police and the courts. Courts, the three natures of courts involved here now. Here. Watch what I caught them using the elderly homes for with the same names, timed roles with the child abuses. Fear!